1 minute ago, the federal courtroom went completely silent, and that silence said more than any argument Trump's lawyers could have made. After months of delays, procedural maneuvers, and last-ditch defenses, the judge issued a ruling that effectively pulled the floor out from under Trump's final legal shield. This was not a warning, not a hint, not a signal for negotiations. This was the court saying, clearly and unmistakably, that the road Trump has been trying to block is now wide open, and it leads somewhere he has spent years insisting could never happen. For weeks, Trump's defense team leaned on one central claim, that procedural protections, timing disputes, and unresolved motions could slow this case down indefinitely. That strategy just collapsed in real time. The judge rejected the final defense framework outright, cleared pending barriers, and set the legal machinery in motion with no ambiguity left on the record. According to courtroom observers, Trump remained seated, staring forward, as his attorneys flipped through papers they already knew were now useless. This ruling matters because it changes the nature of the case instantly. Up until now, Trump's legal posture was built around delay and distance, keeping consequences abstract and far away. With this decision, the court effectively converted theory into reality. Legal analysts are already saying this is the point where exposure becomes unavoidable. Once a federal court clears the procedural path like this, there are no more detours, only outcomes. And here's what makes this moment even more serious. The judge did not use dramatic language. There was no emotional flourish, no raised voice. The ruling was calm, methodical, and devastating. That is how federal courts signal confidence. When a judge stops entertaining defenses and starts clearing pathways, it means the court believes the evidentiary foundation is already strong enough to move forward without hesitation. This is why legal experts are calling this Trump's most dangerous courtroom moment yet. Not because of what was said emotionally, but because of what was removed legally. His final defense did not lose a battle. It ceased to exist. And from this point forward, the question is no longer whether the case can move ahead, but how fast the consequences arrive. The reason this moment hit so hard is because it did not come out of nowhere. For months, the court has been signaling frustration with Trump's legal strategy. Extensions were granted, deadlines were adjusted, and procedural arguments were heard far longer than they normally would be in a federal case. Each time, the judge emphasized that patience was not infinite. Each time, Trump's team treated that warning as negotiable. What finally triggered the collapse was the pattern. The court made clear that delay was no longer serving justice, only avoidance. Legal analysts point out that federal judges are extremely reluctant to accuse defense teams of stalling unless the record is overwhelming. In this case, the record spoke for itself. Missed deadlines, recycled arguments, and motions that rehashed issues already settled were stacking up. By the time this ruling came down, the judge was no longer weighing arguments. She was protecting the integrity of the court. That distinction matters. When a judge believes delay tactics are undermining the process, the response is swift and decisive. That is exactly what happened here. This was not a punishment ruling. It was a control ruling. The court reasserted authority, signaling that no defendant, regardless of status or power, gets to dictate the pace of federal justice indefinitely. Trump's final defense relied on a familiar formula: challenge timelines, question jurisdictional boundaries, and argue that unresolved procedural questions made enforcement premature. That strategy works best when courts are uncertain or divided. It fails when a judge believes the legal foundation is already settled. In this case, the court explicitly rejected the idea that further delay would clarify anything. The judge stated on the record that the remaining defense arguments did not change the underlying legal exposure. That statement is devastating in federal court. It means the judge sees the defense as noise, not substance. Once that happens, everything accelerates. Motions stop buying time, filings stop reshaping the narrative, The defense loses leverage not because it was defeated rhetorically, but because it no longer mattered legally. That is why legal commentators are calling this the collapse point. Trump's defense was not outmaneuvered, it was bypassed. Here is the part that many people misunderstand. Courts do not send people to prison emotionally. They do it procedurally. Every step must be cleared. Every barrier must be removed. That is what this ruling accomplished. By eliminating the final defense obstacle, the court opened the enforcement phase. That phase includes sentencing authority, compliance orders, and potential contempt consequences. Once enforcement begins, outcomes become tangible. Legal experts are already explaining that this ruling does not guarantee prison, but it makes it legally possible in a way that did not exist before. Possibility is power in federal court. Once prison is on the table procedurally, negotiations shift, pressure intensifies, and consequences move from hypothetical to imminent. This is why Trump's legal exposure just multiplied. The shield that kept consequences theoretical is gone. Observers noted that Trump's demeanor changed noticeably as the ruling was read. There was no outburst, no commentary, just stillness. That silence mattered. Trump has built a public persona around dominance and defiance. Courtrooms strip that away. Inside federal court, there is only compliance or consequence. When the ruling landed, Trump did not respond because there was nothing to respond to. The decision was final on the issue presented. Legal analysts say moments like this are psychologically significant. Defendants often realize, sometimes for the first time, that outcomes are no longer controllable. The judge had spoken, and the process moved on without them. Trump has faced losses before. Appeals denied, motions rejected, warnings issued. This moment is different because it removed options. Past rulings left doors open, this one closed them. There is a critical difference between losing an argument and losing a pathway. This ruling removed the pathway that delayed enforcement. That is why experts say comparisons to earlier cases miss the point. This is not another headline loss. It is a structural shift in the case itself. Federal courts operate on precedent and process. When a judge draws a firm line like this, it sends a message beyond one defendant. It reinforces that delay tactics have limits. Legal professionals across the spectrum are watching closely. If high-profile defendants could stall indefinitely, the system would collapse. This ruling reasserts balance. No amount of influence outweighs procedural accountability. That message will shape future cases, not just Trump's. The political reaction was immediate. Supporters framed the ruling as persecution. Critics called it overdue accountability. But beneath the noise, one reality stood out. The legal system moved independently of political pressure. That independence is what makes this moment dangerous for Trump politically. Courts do not negotiate narratives. They enforce orders. As legal consequences accelerate, political messaging becomes less effective. Voters may debate fairness, but judges enforce compliance. From here, the timeline tightens. Compliance deadlines matter. Enforcement mechanisms activate. Appeals become narrower and harder to win. Trump's legal team now faces a compressed schedule with fewer tools. Every move must be precise because mistakes carry immediate consequences.